Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dayan Rahmani and you're watching Policy Wire. Let's begin with a question. What do Dr. Mahrang Baloch, Samideen Baloch, and a 14-year-old so-called climate change activist, Fatma Baloch, recently awarded by UN, have in common? At first glance, they appear to represent a new generation of human rights defenders. Young, visible, and internationally celebrated. But if you take a step back, a pattern begins to emerge. This is not just activism, it is inheritance. These individuals represent a political lineage that has strategically embedded itself into the global human rights discourse. Their advocacy follows a familial and ideological thread, one deeply entangled with long-standing separatist movements. Mahrang Baloch is now the most prominent face of this network. Her arrest in Quetta triggered immediate international condemnation. While presented globally as a peaceful protester, she is facing charges including incitement to violence, interference in counter-terror operations, and the storming of a government morgue. The FIR also names Bibo Baloch, Gulzadi Satakzai, Dr. Sabiha Baloch, Sabatullah Baloch, and Riaz Gashkuri, pointing to a coordinated effort framed as activism but treated legally as disruption. The pattern is not limited to her. Samideen Baloch, daughter of a nationalist figure who disappeared years ago, has been active on international platforms advocating for her cause. Another case where personal history, political identity, and global visibility merge into a potent narrative tool. And most recently, Fatma Iqbal Baloch, a 14-year-old from Balochistan, was awarded by a UN-linked forum for her so-called climate activism. Fatma reportedly participated in beach cleanups and spoke about local pollution. But instead of framing this as a local civic effort, it was projected globally as a symbol of resistance, echoing the same international amplification seen in Mahrang and Sami's cases. Fatma, too, belongs to the same broader ideological circle of Mahrang Baloch. This isn't accidental, it's structural. These hereditary lines have learned how to deploy the language of rights, peace, and now climate, not only for awareness, but for pressure. And in that structure, global faces play a critical role in reinforcing the legitimacy of the broader network. One of the most prominent among them is Malala Yousafzai. Malala today is seen as a champion of human rights and peace. But her silence on insurgent violence, especially attacks by BLA or BLF factions, is notable. She does not comment when security officials are killed or when civilians are targeted by armed groups. There is no statement when police officers are ambushed or infrastructure is destroyed. Yet, when Mahrang Baloch was arrested, Malala spoke out. It's not just an act of solidarity, it's participation in a narrative. Malala's global recognition gives moral cover to movements that increasingly avoid scrutiny. She becomes a softer face of the same advocacy networks, helping translate a local militant adjacent movement into an international human rights cause. Meanwhile, organizations like the Human Rights Council of Balochistan, operating from Sweden, continue producing reports based on unverifiable sources, gaining traction in global media without acknowledging the violence committed by groups they tactfully shield. Their reports are largely sourced from unverified local informants, yet they are recycled globally while ignoring the carnage inflicted by the very groups they sanitize. When 20 Chinese nationals are killed and 34 injured in terrorist attacks since 2021, where are the outcries? When 3 civilians and 15 police officers are injured in BYC-led riots, where's the international condemnation? When BLA militants storm security installations, why do UN bodies and global watchdogs remain silent? And when an incident like the Jaffa Express took place, why did the Human Rights Council decide to not speak? This silence around the insurgent violence was recently broken, but not by an activist, however, but by a defector. Najibullah, who goes by an alias Darwish, a former commander of the Baloch Liberation Army, gave a rare public confession after nearly 20 years inside the organization. Recruited at 14, he was taught to hate, trained to kill, and told he was fighting for Balochistan. But in his own words, "We were tools, they used us." Najibullah described how the BLA's operations were directed by foreign handlers who had no stake in Baloch welfare, only in destabilizing Pakistan. He exposed how the leadership lived comfortably abroad in France, Malaysia, Oman, while young fighters survived in the mountains without food or support. Let us be clear, this is not human rights advocacy, this is information warfare. It's a deliberate exploitation of the West's moral lexicon to create a veneer of legitimacy for a proxy insurgency. It is no coincidence that BLA leaders like Dr. Lanzar's son live in Malaysia, Athar Nadim's in France, and Samideen Baloch's brother in Oman, while the fighters in the mountains don't have 2 pieces of bread to eat, as Najibullah revealed. These so-called leaders send others to die in the name of struggle while they enjoy comfort abroad, lobby in Western capitals, and pose as victims at human rights forums. It is exploitation of the worst kind, not just of foreign sympathy, but of the Baloch people themselves. What we're seeing is not a purely grassroots struggle, but a hereditary structure that repurposes human rights for political and strategic ends. To our international viewers, diplomats, journalists, rights advocates, the question is not whether rights should be defended. They should. The question is, are you being shown the full picture? Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.